So I have another piece that I read for the first time last period. I just wrote it, and as I was explaining to the last period, I do like, anytime I do a feature or do a set, I like to have a new piece, almost to show that some pieces are still in revision stages, some pieces will be new, need an edit, but if you believe in the message enough, you feel like you have to get it on stage or get it out there, and that feeling of frailty when you don't know how an audience is going to respond is something that also really charges you if you've been performing for a long time, so it kind of, keeps you on your toes a bit. And this poem is really important to me, and I've been thinking of this message for a while and how to get it out, and finally did. So I hope that it has some kind of connection. And it's a more serious piece, too, which a lot of times I don't do those kind of pieces at assemblies and things like that, because, it's early in the morning, and you probably just want to be entertained. But this is one of the more serious poems that I've written. All right. Our eyes met for an instant almost 30 years ago. I wonder if he remembers that night as vividly as I. His pockmarked face jolted from shock to empathic horror in that split second we connected. I imagine that he loved, hated working late on weekends. It was slow, so he didn't have to stay on his toes and sizzle splatter his skin as much with chicken grease. But then the time surely dragged by, with him keenly aware of every minute he wasn't spending a Saturday night out seizing the moment with his buds. He probably knew the second my dad drove up and slurred his order into the drive-through speaker that things were rotten on the other end. Could he smell my father's whiskey-crocked breath through the headset? When he placed the order on the windowsill, he had to know there was a chance the drunk barreling forward might steal low-rent chicken if given the opportunity. When my dad did rip the bag and peeled away in one motion, it was then that the Brown's chicken jockey saw me, a 4-foot nothing, afraid for my life in the back seat, dragged along because my mother had crashed and Pops needed a fourth meal. Did he see my sister, 3 years my younger, next to me, already crying because the dad she knew was not behind the wheel of our Econo van? Could he guess that my sister turned to me as we floored it and whisper wept, "Dad's going to jail"? I corrected her. No, Dad's going to hell. Did the chicken pusher foresee an immediate future where my dad bungled into our driveway, dropped a drumstick on the doorstep to meet his wife, my mother, a screaming barrage of cursing that betrayed her otherwise demure character, leaving my sister and I convinced that a divorce was all but sealed? The way my wide eyes met the drive-through clerk's stupefied gaze, I'm certain that he knew all too well that my father went from my hero to just some dude named Bobby C., who happened to live under my roof. As Pops heaved his self-respect all night into a bucket my mom used to mop the floors, Chicken Man had to know that a guy like Bobby C. spent a lifetime saying innocent-sounding things like, "Hey, it's got to be 5 o'clock somewhere," and "It's just time to unwind a little bit," to start his nightly binges. That most people just thought Bobby C. was the life of the party, good times Bobby, the lit bird, and other playful terms you toss around to a socially acceptable disease. When my sister stayed up most of the night, peeking through curtains, convinced that the cops would barrage our house, I fell asleep to a promise that when I had children, I wouldn't underestimate what they may one day refuse to unsee. As I drifted off, my only regret is that some teen at a Brown's Chicken saw me vulnerable, and I hoped he'd soon forget the look on my face, that he just chalked it up to a wild Saturday night. Thanks. All right, thank you. I then feel after I write or read that poem that I must admit my dad is actually, outside of that, a really good dude. So, yeah, so that's my disclaimer. Oh, he's normally a really good dude. So there you go.